Alexander Isak looking to force a move away from Newcastle, and he isn't the first to do that. We're going to take a little trip down memory lane next. In a moment, Gianluigi Donnarumma, wait for it, expected to leave PSG this summer. Where could he be playing next season? There he is, Donnarumma, like I said, after the break, next. Everton have completed the signing of Jack Grealish on a season-long loan from Manchester City. Talk Alexander Isak. He's still training away from his Newcastle teammates after expressing a desire to leave St James's Park. Carve, any developments?
Well, the only developments today have been a couple of newspaper reports saying that as soon as Alexander Isak found out that he wasn't going to be invited to this family bonding day that Newcastle had at the training ground, that was the same day, apparently, that he moved out of his rental property in Newcastle. Now, I don't think the two events are connected at all. There have been reports that Alexander Isak moved house, didn't want to live in that rental property because it had been targeted by burglars. So I think there's always going to be stories about Alexander Isak every day. But the underlying story is that nothing much has changed. The player still wants to leave, and Newcastle United are not going to let him go unless their valuation is met. And that is a valuation that no one is willing to pay at the moment.
Carve says nothing much has changed. If it stays like that, if it continues through the window, is it more likely that come the end of the window, he's still wearing black and white?
It feels like as the days pass, that's becoming more and more likely. At this moment in time, there is no bid on the table. Newcastle rejected a bid from Liverpool in the region of around £110 million. That was about 10 days ago. There's been no movement whatsoever at this moment in time. Newcastle are only going to allow him to leave if their valuation is met. We understand their valuation is around £150 million. It's unclear whether they'll be able to get that over the course of the next few days, and if they can get a replacement lined up. And that is proving to be very difficult for Newcastle right now. They tried to sign Hugo Ekitike. He went to Liverpool. They tried to sign Benjamin Sesko. He went to Manchester United. There aren't many number nines that can come in and do anything near like what Alexander Isak has done in a Newcastle shirt right now. But Newcastle need to act quickly, because heading into the first game of the Premier League season for them this weekend against Aston Villa, they have one fit striker, William Asula. They've got a huge amount of excitement and optimism for his time at Newcastle. He's got one Premier League goal. Callum Wilson departed at the end of last season. Whether or not he can be successfully reintegrated is another question, because I think there's a lot of patching up that needs to be done. Newcastle fans and the club are very unhappy with the way that Alexander Isak has carried himself and his entourage have carried themselves over the course of the last few months. He left it quite late to say that he wanted to explore his options elsewhere. A lot of bridges are going to have to be mended if he's to be reintegrated into this Newcastle side. But he's got 3 years left in his contract. He's a Newcastle player. He's contracted to Newcastle. Newcastle expects, if it comes to beyond the transfer window and he remains a Newcastle player, that he trains for the first team and he plays for Newcastle once again.
It's interesting what you say there about how his actions have been received, because his future, definitely a transfer saga, dominated the headlines throughout this summer, and the subject of what he's been up to has divided the opinion of Newcastle fans and neutrals alike.
I think I've said many times, he is contracted to us, he's our player. The club basically make the decision on his future. I don't know what that will be.
When you've got the best striker, people are going to come calling, and he's obviously been attracted by the calls that have come, and we have to understand that. As a Newcastle fan, you don't want to understand it.
And you can't say I'm never going to play for Newcastle again, because if he doesn't make that move, then he's going to want to play. Every footballer wants to play matches.
He's still one of the best strikers in the world, so I do want him here.
Alexander Isak's let a lot of people down.
And that's the route he's going down, which, you know, will be hard to accept for everyone who's, you know, a Newcastle fan.
I do genuinely think the best thing Newcastle could have done was sell Isak. You have to sell a player that doesn't want to be there, take the money and then go and reinvest that money onto players.
If he's got an opportunity to go to the Champions, then, you know, it's so difficult to say no.
If he wants to go and he's heart set on going to Liverpool and Liverpool want to pay the money, then I think that deal could happen. And it'd be hard on Newcastle because they've lost out on a lot of their targets they want, but they'll be fine.
I want to see us kind of be able to rebuild that relationship.
I think the more that this goes on, it's actually causing more harm than good. Yes, if the window shuts and he doesn't go, then everyone involved in Newcastle will be delighted.
It could have been and should have been handled better. Alexander Isak could have left this summer and still been considered a legend of the club.
Everyone's got a view on Alexander Isak, but he may or may not go to Liverpool. That said, should Liverpool be targeting other areas of the pitch.
Well, they are in talks with Crystal Palace to sign the Palace captain, Marc Guehi. Now, Steve Parish, the Palace chairman, said 2 days ago that the situation regarding Guehi was very, very simple. He's only got a year left on his contract. Palace can't afford for him to leave on a free. So unless he signs a new deal, he's going to leave this summer. Now, it's very, very unlikely that he'll sign a new deal. I think Liverpool feel that he wants to move to Liverpool. They have a very, very good relationship with Steve Parish. They're doing everything by the book. That is why they're holding club-to-club talks first. Now, how much would he cost? We know last summer there was talk of him being valued at around £70 million. But now, 1 year left on his contract, I think that has dropped significantly. I think Palace probably value him at around £40 million. Liverpool probably trying to get him for around £30 or £35 million. I think it would be a very, very good move for the player himself. No disrespect to Crystal Palace, of course. He's done a fantastic job at Crystal Palace, won 2 major trophies as well. But I think when Liverpool come calling, especially the present Liverpool side, it's very, very difficult for a player to say no. If there's club-to-club agreement between Palace and Liverpool, then Liverpool would start talking to his intermediaries and his representatives about personal terms. But we have not got there yet. They need to agree a deal with Palace first.
OK, we're going to talk Palace a little bit later on and that ruling by CAS and what it might mean for transfers and others as well. Going back to Liverpool, though, chasing Isak, as I say, should they be spending more time bringing in a centre-back rather than a striker?
I think if you ask some Liverpool fans, I was at the game on Sunday, there is a feeling that they really need some more strength and depth in that centre-back area. If you look at their bench on Sunday, there weren't any centre-backs on the bench, and Arne Slot was asked about signing a defender on Friday ahead of the game, and he said that the likes of Endo and Andy Robertson could fit in there if required. They've sold Jarrod Quansah to Bayer Leverkusen, a really good fee they got for Jarrod Quansah. But it means that right now they've got the 2 centre-backs, Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahima Konate. Konate's contract expires at the end of this season, and they have a lack of options there right now. Joe Gomez seems to be injured a lot at the moment. It's a real concern for Joe Gomez. So you can understand why they need to sign a centre-back. They also understand why they need to sign an attacking player as well, because, yes, they've been really aggressive in terms of what they've gone after in this transfer window. But actually, they're one short on where they were last season with the players they brought in, the players have departed. So you can understand why. But I think the centre-back is a priority, because if they don't sign an attacking player, they still have the likes of Engo Moa, the 16-year-old on the left-hand side, Harvey Elliott, Ben Doak as well, and they've got options there if required. I think the centre-back area is one they really need to address. If anything happens to Virgil van Dijk or Konate, I think they're in real trouble.
And we saw what happened when they lost Virgil van Dijk a couple of seasons ago, Carve.
One other line to bring you about centre-backs and Liverpool. This is from Sky Italy, who've been reporting that Liverpool are very interested in signing possibly the best young centre-back in Europe at the moment. He plays for Parma. He's 18 years old. He's called Giovanni Leone. He's valued at €30 million. Inter Milan also interested in him. OK, so we know that Crystal Palace might be losing Marc Guehi, their captain. They also might be losing Eberechi Eze. So what's going on with him? Well, he's been linked with a move to Tottenham. His release clause is worth around £68 million and reportedly expires on Friday. Well, Thomas Frank was asked about Spurs' pursuit of Eze today.
I think there's a lot of good players out there. There's also a few from the PSG team, but I don't think we can buy them right now. So in general, players in or players out, I'm only speaking about, either something done or not done. So in general, I speak about my own players. I think I got a good team, good squad. Of course, there's transfer window. We are definitely, in the market, and we'll do everything we can to make the best possible and strongest squad ready for the 1st of September. So there's a few things in the air, as you say, along the way.
So Carve, just Spurs after Eze?
I think Arsenal are interested in him, and he's been a long-term target for Arsenal too. I think when you've got a situation where the 2 big North London clubs are after the same player, they've both got to be even more careful than they are when it comes to trying to sign players, because they don't want to get into a situation where they get involved in a sort of bidding war, or their fans are encouraged to say, look, he signed for us, he turned you down. So they've got to be very, very sure that the player himself wants to move to them before they make any official bid. Now, if his release clause does expire on Friday, if I was a Crystal Palace fan, I would be hoping and praying that nothing happens until Friday, because if you get to a situation where that release clause has expired, then obviously that puts Palace and their chairman, Steve Parish, in a much stronger position. And he's got 2 years left on his contract, so they could afford to hold on to him for at least another season.
Right, hold on. Earlier in the programme, we were lauding Everton for going for it, going for Jack Grealish, getting Jack Grealish. Shouldn't one of those London clubs pay £68 million for the release clause and get Eze? James.
I think if I was in charge of a sporting director at a club like Tottenham or Arsenal, I'd be going straight after him. For Arsenal, they are prioritising sales right now because it's been a really busy window in terms of incomings. For Tottenham, I think they should be acting on this. If I was a Tottenham fan, that's one player I'd want through the door right now. They've got so many wide players right now, but in terms of number 10s, they're really lacking. Dejan Kulusevski is out for a significant period of time. James Maddison will miss the majority of the season. This is a player who's excelled so much in a Crystal Palace shirt over the course of the last few years. It's been amazing watching his development, a player who was rejected from the Millwall Academy. He went to QPR, impressed there, got the move to Crystal Palace, and we've seen him flourish, in particular over the course of the last 18 months under Oliver Glasner. He's one of the most gifted players in the Premier League. Technically, he can score goals, create goals. Jean-Philippe Mateta is very pleased to have Ibrahima as a Crystal Palace player. I'm not sure how long he'll remain as a Crystal Palace player because he is just so good. They'd love to keep hold of him for another season, especially as it looks like Marc Guehi will depart. I think it looks like that will be the case because of his contract situation. But yeah, £68 million. It feels like really good value if the club gets it done this week.
So we know Spurs, one of the clubs interested in Eze. Spurs also pursuing Savinho from Manchester City. Where are we with this one?
Well, the interest in Eze, but in terms of Savinho, there's concrete movement here because Tottenham have approached City around signing him. Talks are underway between the two clubs. City do not want to sell him. They've only had one season with him so far, and there were some really bright sparks. I know he only scored one Premier League goal, but he created a number of chances for Manchester City, and I think they do have a number of wide options there right now. Savinho can play as a number 10. I think he's better off playing on the right-hand side or the left-hand side. He's a left-footed winger who plays on the right. We see that so often nowadays with the inverted wingers. So they are in the market for a 10 and a winger. And I think Thomas Frank, if he ended the transfer window with these two players, he would be absolutely delighted because it feels like Spurs need something right now. There was a lot of positive momentum you felt at the start of the summer. Thomas Frank coming in, Mohamed Kudus, a bit of a punt, but we know what he can do. But with the injuries, Dominic Solanke, we've still not seen him so far this season. You can understand why, if they can get these two through the door, I feel like you get a bit of momentum heading into a season in the Champions League for Spurs.
Now, this one raised a load of eyebrows. Gianluigi Donnarumma expected to leave Paris Saint-Germain this summer after he failed to agree a new deal with the European champions. Multiple clubs are trying to sign him. He has just 1 year left on his PSG contract. I say multiple clubs. You tell us which ones.
Well, look, I don't know for sure which clubs are interested in signing him, but he's arguably the best goalkeeper in the world. Who's better than him? Maybe Alisson at Liverpool at the moment. But there are reports that clubs like Manchester City are interested in signing him, clubs like Manchester United as well, although I think that would be difficult to see happening because he is on big wages. The background to this is that he moved to PSG as a free agent 4 years ago. You remember, he was represented by Mino Raiola at the time. He was the best goalkeeper in the world. PSG, because they weren't paying a transfer fee for him, broke the bank almost, although it's difficult to break the bank when you're PSG, to pay his wages. Now his contract is going to run out next summer. There have been talks about a new deal, but I don't think PSG want to pay the kind of money that perhaps the player feels that he is worth. And also, PSG don't want to be in the situation anymore where players are leaving and free transfers. Remember that whole saga with Kylian Mbappe as well. Once bitten, twice shy. So I think what they've done is gone out and bought a new goalkeeper, Lucas Chevalier, for 40 million euros. They've said to Lucas Chevalier, you're the number one. Donnarumma is not even in the squad for the Super Cup game against Tottenham. All parties are trying to work to find him a new club. But of course, it's going to be very difficult because he's arguably the best goalkeeper in the world and he's on big wages. And he always has the option of just saying, you know what, I'm not going anywhere. I've got this big contract. I like my life in Paris.
Not doing that in the World Cup year.
Well,
not doing it.
I agree with you. How could Italy's number one goalkeeper not play at all in a World Cup year? But he does have that option. But it looks like he's not going to play for PSG again. And it's quite an incredible turnaround because just a few months ago, he was winning the Champions League in spectacular fashion as one of the key players in that brilliant PSG side.
Top goalkeeper. There won't be short of suitors. What about Alejandro Garnacho? Has he got lots of suitors?
Well, it looks like one in particular. Napoli were interested in signing him in January and they had interest in the summer. They've moved on to other targets. But Chelsea, that's been a long-standing interest. There were conversations that took place in January. Things have stepped up now. There's talks ongoing now between Chelsea and Manchester United. And this is a really important deal that United get right because they've been really active in the transfer market in terms of bringing in players. Now the priority is selling players. Alejandro Garnacho would represent pure profit from a profit and sustainability perspective. Previously, they were looking for around 70, 60 million pounds. I'm unsure they're going to get that right now because of a number of conditions. The fact he's been frozen out of the first team picture, he's not training with the first team squad. I know Ruben Amorim says he'll be reintegrated if there isn't the market value met by a club like Chelsea. But also Ruben Amorim said that Konate was looking for a new type of leader. He's looking for a new type of project. So you'd expect him to depart. Chelsea, yes, they have a number of wide players, but all these different wide players have a specific profile as well. We know Garnacho is a very, very talented player. Perhaps he needs the right manager and the right club. So I think this is a deal that could happen. Chelsea want to try and sign him before the end of this transfer window. I think he will depart before the end of this transfer window. I think he'll probably head to Chelsea as well.
OK, so you think Garnacho on the way out. Are Manchester United going to get Carlos Baleba in?
I still think this is a very difficult deal for Manchester United to do for a number of reasons. They've spent a huge amount of money replenishing their front line, but their next priority is signing a central midfielder if they can. The reason why this is difficult is because United do need to prioritise sales. So far, there's not been a huge amount brought in. Yes, there's been the sell-on clause of the likes of Anthony Elanga. They've probably made around £20 million in terms of things like that, but unless they can get £40 million for Rasmus Højlund, they can get a good deal for Anthony, they can get a good deal for Jadon Sancho, they're not really going to be in a situation where they can really attack this transfer and bring in Carlos Baleba. The other factor is Brighton, they're not going to sell him on the cheap. He's arguably as good as Moises Caicedo was at that stage when Chelsea spent £150 million on him. Maybe not quite as ready as Caicedo, but you can understand the sort of figures that Brighton will be looking at for Carlos Baleba to depart. You wouldn't expect it to be anywhere short of 70, 80 million pounds. So for United to go after that, they need to do a lot of work in terms of outgoings over the course of the next few weeks.
Well,
I
let's
think
talk about that. Are they going to get the famous five? Are they going to close the book on the famous five?
I think Jadon Sancho, they'll find an exit for him. I think it's going to be difficult to do a permanent deal, I think. But Borussia Dortmund are a club that are exploring the conditions of doing another deal to bring him in. I'm not sure whether or not they'll be able to get a permanent transfer for Jadon Sancho. But he's got 1 year left in his contract. There's the option of another year. So United could look to do something like a loan with an obligation to buy. Of course, they'll do a loan, but if there's a permanent element, Real Betis want to try to sign him. They're looking at a loan. They don't think they can find the finances to do a permanent deal. But of course, as we've spoken about all transfer window, as we get closer and closer to the deadline, there will need to be compromises when it comes to the player and the club as well. So United may have to take much less money than they wanted in June, what they will take on the 1st of September to get rid of these players. Malacia, slightly different, I think, because of his injury record. I think that's going to be very difficult. Rasmus Højlund, if they can get £40 million for him, then that would represent not too much of a loss. His book value right now is around £45 million. They signed him for around £70 million a couple of years ago. AC Milan in talks. I think if they could get rid of Højlund and Garnacho for around £80 million and they can get something like £20 million for Anthony, maybe 15 for Sancho, then that would represent good business. United haven't sold well over the course of the last few years. They need to sell well now if they're going to attack the rest of this transfer window.
Carve, old enough to get my Enid Brighton reference. James, far too young. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, FA Cup winners Crystal Palace been demoted from playing in the Euro. So Alexander Isak looking to force through a move out of Newcastle. Now that conjures up memories of previous times when players have looked to leave. Remember this in the summer of 1998? Nottingham Forest then striker Pierre van Hooijdonk went on strike for 11 games, upset at the club's asking price for his transfer. He returned to Forest, but they were relegated to the First Division. Now, in 1999, amid interest from Real Madrid, Nicolas Anelka said he wouldn't play for Arsenal again and didn't report for training. Well, he eventually got his move.
What do you say to the Arsenal fans, many who thought you had treated the club badly? Do you have a message for the fans you have left at Arsenal?
No, I just want to say I want to leave, and now I signed for Madrid.
Well, another protracted exit from Arsenal was Ashley Cole's in 2006. Now, he felt Arsenal had backed out on a promise on his salary, leading to a move to Chelsea. William Gallas moved in the opposite direction. Tottenham's Dimitar Berbatov refused to play in a London derby against Chelsea in 2008 to facilitate a move to Manchester United. You may remember that transfer completed on deadline day for £30 million.
You're sitting there, what do I say? It was okay in the end because Sir Alex knows how to break the ice, start the conversation. But I was nervous because nothing was happening, and it was coming down to the last minute of the transfer window.
Remember this, Manchester City's Carlos Tevez submitted a transfer request and refused to warm up.
He is one bad apple. He epitomises what the man in the street thinks is wrong with modern footballers.
He can play, never.
Well, Tevez eventually apologised and, of course, returned and helped City win the title under Roberto Mancini. And no look back could ever miss out Peter Odemwingie. West Bromwich Albion striker famously drove to QPR on deadline day in 2013, expecting a transfer, which of course fell through and resulted in disciplinary action. Peter Odemwingie. Right, we're running out of time, James. Any other transfer news?
A few little bits. West Ham have seen an opening bid of £30 million rejected by Southampton for Mateus Fernandes. Saints don't want to sell. They want to see a value. They want to see an offer in the region around £50 million. At the same time, Leeds, Daniel Farke spoke at the weekend. He really wants some more attacking players to come in. They've had a long-standing interest in Rodrigo Muniz. They want to sign him before their deadline. He's their top striker target. They've been patient. Fulham do not want to sell to a Premier League rival. They don't want to sell him altogether. They want to have Raul Jimenez and Rodrigo Muniz. There's interest from Atlanta as well. So those are two ones to watch, I think. Southampton, what's going to happen with Tyler Dibbling? What is going to happen with Mateus Fernandes? West Ham want to sign him, but they've not put up the right money just yet.
OK, all right. It's been an absolute pleasure. Particularly enjoyed the Crystal Palace chat, Garvey, as usual.
Did my
you
best.
got on your high horse, which was great. That is the transfer show for today. The early version. Deal for Everton, good deal for Manchester City. What do you think?
On paper, I think it's a good deal for all parties. If you look at this picture of Jack Grealish at the moment, the thing I noticed is how fit he looks. And that is one of the reasons why he didn't go to the Club World Cup in the US with Manchester City. I think he sat down with City and everybody decided that it would be best for him to have a full pre-season before he joins a new club. And the important thing for him is that he wants to play. He wants to play regularly. That's what he's been missing at City, and that is what he's going to get at Everton. Now, you don't need me to tell you what a big club Everton are and what a connection their fans have with their players. They adore skillful players like Jack Grealish. They've had players like Wayne Rooney, like Paul Gascoigne as well. I think this could be a match made in heaven if everything goes well. And I think the ultimate goal for Jack Grealish is to get his place back in the England squad as well, because he's desperate to be back in and he's desperate to play in the World Cup in the US, Canada and Mexico next summer.
Yeah, well, Carve said that Jack looks really fit, possibly because he's standing next to me. But anyway, this is what David Moyes has had to say. I think we're getting him at a good time because he's experienced, he understands the Premier League, and we're all fully aware of the levels he's capable of performing to. I know Jack's ambition is to get back into the England squad, so hopefully we can help him achieve that over the course of the season. We're all looking forward to working with him and providing a platform for him to show the best version of himself. James, is David Moyes absolutely the manager who should take Jack Grealish on at the moment?
I think so. A word on Grealish himself. I actually thought this deal would be one that got done later on in the summer, perhaps on deadline day, where there would potentially need to be more compromise from Manchester City on wages and Jack Grealish as well. He's opted against having an opportunity to wait and play in Europe this season. I think that shows you a lot about the fact he wants to be playing football again. He wants to put himself in the market so Thomas Tuchel can select him again, because he was brilliant in that first game he played for under Thomas Tuchel for England against Ireland. You thought, this is the old Jack Grealish, the Jack Grealish that plays in that carefree attitude and that manner where you think he can do anything on the pitch. He doesn't feel like he's being regimented to do what a manager wants him to do. You'd think that David Moyes will give him the opportunity to thrive. David Moyes is now in a situation where he's got too many number 10s because Kieran Dewsbury Hall has just signed as well. They've got Illiman and Dyer, they've got Dwight McNeil, and now they've got Jack Grealish. He simply needs to play 715 minutes in the Premier League he got last season. For whatever reason, things have not worked out for Jack Grealish over the course of the last 12 to 18 months. I think he's now going to be in a situation whereby we thought we may not see him playing football for a long period of time, because if he did sign on deadline day, there'd be that time to acclimatise. He's now got pretty much a week to get himself in condition to feature, I'm not sure he'll start, but to feature in Everton's first game of the Premier League season against Leeds. He's got a great opportunity to have a good season and get himself back in contention. There are 3 international breaks between now and the end of the year. If he performs well for Everton over the course of the next few weeks, he'll be right in contention to be in that World Cup squad.
Carve, James said that he thought this would get done towards the end of the window. That said, have other clubs missed a trick should they have been in for Grealish?
I think there were plenty of other clubs who were interested in signing him, but they wanted to wait and see. They wanted to play poker. As James said, the longer you wait, the closer you get to deadline day, the better deal you can potentially get. But Everton didn't want to play games. They realised that Jack Grealish is, well, he was a few years ago, a £100 million player. I remember being at the Euros in Germany last summer. Jack Grealish wasn't in the England squad, I don't think. Did he make the England squad? No, he didn't.
He was gutted, he missed out.
He missed out on the England squad. But travelling around Germany, he was one of the faces of that tournament. The commercial deals that UEFA had done, a lot of them featured Jack Grealish as the face alongside players like Harry Kane and Kylian Mbappe, for instance. So just 12 months ago, he was a superstar of world football. That is why I think Everton have got a brilliant deal. of course, we don't know how it's going to turn out, but if he gets back to his best, I think David Moyes can get the best out of him as well. Because I just think Jack Grealish is the kind of player who needs a manager to put his arm round him and, just to say to him, look, you just get out there on the pitch, you do what you do, we'll give you the ball, entertain the crowd, create chances, score goals, we'll take care of everything else. I think perhaps that is what has been missing for Jack Grealish over the past couple of years. But I don't want to underestimate the fact that when he's been at Manchester City, he has won some incredible trophies, including the treble as well. So it hasn't, by any stretch of the imagination, been doom and gloom for him at City.
Mike, one thing I wanted to quickly mention here, we say it's a good deal for all parties. It's a very costly deal for Everton, though, because when you look at what they're paying in terms of wages, this could cost them around £10 million, and he's going to be the highest paid player in that Everton dressing room by a country mile as well. So that may have an impact, but I think you'd think those teammates would be happy to see Jack Grealish rather than be without him and see him play elsewhere. So it's going to be costly for Everton. But if they have a good season, they get themselves back into contention to qualify for Europe. Maybe that will be this season. But if you can help kickstart that process in this brand new stadium, then it'll be money well spent.
Well, there's no doubt Jack Grealish is a superstar, and he's picked the shirt number of superstars of the past. And here he is telling us why.
My two favourite players, English players ever, to play football is Wayne Rooney and Paul Gascoigne. So I've always known that when they played here, they both wore number 18. So as soon as I knew this deal was close, I had a look and number 18 was free, which was perfect for me.
Vinny O'Connor has taken off his snorkel and he is back. Vinny, fingers crossed. Right, they've got Grealish in. Any more expected to come in the door at Everton?
Yeah, I think so, Mike. I think David Moyes has made it clear earlier in the transfer window that he wanted to get at least 9 or 10 new signings in. He's made 6 so far with Jack Grealish there. And it's nice to see that Jack Grealish endearing himself to Evertonians in some way. You know that Evertonians sing, and if you know your history, he clearly knows his history by taking the number 18 shirt as well and looking at his heroes of the past in Paul Gascoigne and Wayne Rooney. But what else can Everton add as an attacking threat? Because we're no longer looking to strengthen in that area still. They would like to strengthen down their right-hand side, for instance. They don't have an out-and-out attacking right-sided player at the minute. Dwight McNeil can operate out there, but we're used to seeing him from the left-hand side, as we are Jack Grealish, as we are indeed Iliman and Dijk, although Grealish and Dijk can both play the number 10 role as well. So Tyler Dibbling they've been in for at Southampton. I don't necessarily think that is dead, but obviously it needs a compromise from Southampton's point of view in terms of the valuation. It's a similar situation with Abdul Fatwa at Leicester City, of course, as well, because again it seems that Everton and Leicester are some way apart on their valuations of the player. On top of that, realistically, David Moyes would like to get in an experienced striker who can operate as the focal point, maybe take a bit of the pressure off Tieno Barry and Beto to a certain extent as well. A defensive midfielder of the profile of Idrissa Gana Gueye, again, would be a welcome addition, and certainly Everton would look to strengthen at right full-back as well to increase the options that they have there. So we're expecting more to come in this transfer window, albeit Jack Grealish at his 6th summer signing so far.
Vinny, you were worth waiting for. Thank you very much. Vinny O'Connor, live from Finch Farm, Everton's training ground. And how about this? Grealish could make his debut for Everton against Leeds in the Monday Night Football. That will be something to see. Right, we are as other clubs. Well, they released a lengthy statement, definitely worth listening to. Palace first criticised those rules that have seen them demoted. This is what they said. At a time when we should be celebrating our victory in the Community Shield at Wembley, the decision by UEFA, and followed by the Court of Arbitration for Sport, shows that sporting merit is rendered meaningless. When we won the FA Cup against Manchester City on that momentous day in May, our managers and players earned the right to play in the Europa League. We've been denied that opportunity. It appears that certain clubs, organisations and individuals have a unique privilege and power. This growing and unhealthy influence has shattered the hopes and dreams of Crystal Palace supporters and does not bode well for aspirational teams all over Europe, competing to progress when rules and sanctions are unevenly applied in the most flagrant way. Multi-club structures hide behind the charade of a blind trust, while clubs such as ours, who have no connection to any club whatsoever, are prevented from playing in the same competition. To compound the injustice, clubs that appear to have huge informal arrangements with each other are also allowed to participate and even possibly play against each other. Strong stuff from from Palace. So, Carve, how will this demotion affect their transfer business?
Well, obviously it will have an effect on their transfer business. I don't think there's going to be a fire sale of players at Palace. I think just because they're playing in the Conference League and not the Europa League, it doesn't mean lots of players are going to be ringing up Steve Parish saying, I don't want to play in the Conference League, get me out of here, I want to jump ship. But obviously Palace need to sign players and they need to sell a player or a few players over the next couple of weeks to strengthen Oliver Glasner's squad. So it will definitely have an effect, but I don't think it will have a massive effect on the number of players who will be leaving Palace over the next few days and weeks.
All right, that statement released by Palace I thought was really informative. They're having a go, aren't they? Right, Carve. Who made the error, UEFA or Palace?
Who made the biggest error? UEFA.
Go on.
I think the decision that UEFA have taken is absolutely extraordinary. I think Nottingham Forest have done nothing wrong in this whatsoever. I got interested in football in the 70s and 80s. Nottingham Forest are a club that I have utmost respect for. City Ground, one of my favourite football grounds in the world. So I'm not standing here being anti-Nottingham Forest. I wish them all the best in the Europa League. But Crystal Palace, 100% are absolutely not part of a multi-club ownership group. And not one person can look me in the eye and say, if Crystal Palace and Lyon both play in the Europa League next season, there is any risk to the integrity of the Europa League. Is anyone seriously going to say to me, there's a chance that somehow Lyon and Crystal Palace are going to collude to fix games or do something which will affect the integrity of the Europa League? I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, rules are rules. They had until March the 1st to sort this out. Why didn't they sort it out?
Exactly.
Well, what I'll say to you is, rules are rules, but UEFA change the rules all the time because the deadline used to be June the 1st. But a chairman of UEFA's club financial control body came in, decided to shake things up, changed the deadline. And the thing is, clubs, big clubs who are part of multi-club ownership groups, they always are used to qualifying for Europe, so they know how the rules work. They know the legal loopholes they can use to get around the rules.
They're just obeying the rules. It's not a loophole, is it?
Well, for instance, last season, Manchester United and Nice both played in the Europa League. Who calls the shots at Manchester United? Jim Ratcliffe. Who calls the shots at Nice? Jim Ratcliffe. Now, of course, they set up a legal structure to satisfy UEFA to say that, no, the two clubs are separate. And, OK, I will accept that as well. But you've got to say that can be seen as being a loophole. And there is a connection between those two clubs, no matter what they've done legally. There is absolutely no connection between Crystal Palace and Lyon. There used to be, and that was John Textor. But
exactly.
He's gone.
He's gone now.
He sold his shares.
He's gone now, Carver. He hadn't gone then. He was on the board of both clubs.
What happens to big clubs who break UEFA's rules? When Real Madrid or Barcelona or Chelsea Manchester City break UEFA's rules, what happens? Well, I'll leave Manchester City out of it because that's more complicated. But I've seen instances where Real Madrid, Barcelona, they get a little slap on the wrist. They don't get demoted from the Champions League. Has that happened? No. Who gets demoted from the Conference League? Who gets demoted from the Europa League? Small clubs. Apparently what UEFA see as small clubs, like Crystal Palace, like Drogheda United in the League of Ireland. UEFA have got this absolutely, totally and utterly 100% wrong.
That's interesting.
That is my personal. That is my personal opinion.
That's why you're here.
I'm not a Crystal Palace fan, and I'm somebody who always bends over backwards to try and be fair and objective and see things from UEFA's point of view and also from FIFA's point of view. I'm not somebody who stands here kicking FIFA, kicking UEFA 24/7. I try my best to see it from their point of view as well. I'm sure there are lots of people who work at UEFA as well who are looking at this and saying, the FA Cup winners, the oldest cup competition in the world. Crystal Palace won their first ever major trophy. They earned their place in the Europa League, and we're doing this to them. We're treating them like this. It just leaves a really, really bad taste in the mouth. And nothing against Nothing against all the clubs, even the Red Bull clubs, Manchester City, Girona. I'm not having a go at them. The rules are rules. They've done absolutely nothing wrong. Nottingham Forest have done absolutely nothing wrong. All I'm saying to you is that all Crystal Palace have done is make an administrative error. They didn't meet that March 1st deadline because the deadline was moved, because John Textor was trying to sell his stake in Crystal Palace, and if he'd put it in a blind trust, he wouldn't have been able to sell that stake. There's lots of reasons. It's not as black and white as just saying Crystal Palace made a mistake. Tough. You're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to pay the price. It's much more complicated than that. And I think Crystal Palace have been treated appallingly by UEFA.
Did you want to come in there, James?
I just think, with the blind trust point of view, at that point on the 1st of March, Crystal Palace, I think, were in the 5th round of the FA Cup. So at that point, should John Textor have put his money in a blind trust whereby it meant it was impossible for that period of time for him to sell his stake in the club? I don't think at that point in time you can expect Crystal Palace to have put themselves in a situation in the 5th round of the FA Cup with all those teams still in it. Bear in mind, they'd never won a major trophy, to put themselves in contention to feature in Europe if they end up in the same competition as Lyon. It seemed very unlikely that Lyon wouldn't be in the Champions League, but Lyon fell away a little bit, and at one point they were out of Europe altogether. Things have really fallen the wrong side of everything when it came to Crystal Palace, because Lyon were relegated from Ligue 1. They appealed that. If their relegation stood, then Crystal Palace would be in the Europa League. They've been very, very unfortunate. They've been very harshly dealt with. I've covered Crystal Palace for a number of years. They are not operating as a multi-club ownership. John Textor has no say whatsoever in what has gone on at Crystal Palace. He's not there anymore. When he was there, he was trying to get out. He wanted to buy Everton. He wanted to buy a number of different clubs. He was so unhappy with the way he had no say whatsoever, really, in what went on at Crystal Palace. Steve Parish owns the club. He runs the club. John Textor had no say whatsoever, and that's why he tried to get out. He wants to own his own football club where he can do what he wants. That's why he tried to get out of Crystal Palace. He didn't have any decisive authority over the running of Crystal Palace. It's been appalling how Crystal Palace are missing out on playing in the Europa League. The only silver lining is Crystal Palace, at the start of last season, if you offered them to play in Europe next season, they'd have taken it. Clearly, the Conference League is an inferior competition to the Europa League. You can only hope now that they qualify for the Conference League, because now they've got 2 extra games they're going to have to play in August. It's bad for Crystal Palace. They've got a great team, a great manager. They're very well run. You can only hope that something falls their way eventually.
I enjoyed that immensely. We'll take a break now. When we come back, Alex